In the spring of 1989, demands for change swept through Beijing's Tiananmen Square, down its city streets, and eventually across the nation. When student and aspiring national athlete Fang Zheng joined in, hopes were high that protesters could help build a better China. Fang Zheng spoke with VOA via Skype.
University students in the 80s all had a similar attitude. They were all very idealistic. We also had a strong sense of social responsibility and concern for the fate of the country.
That changed dramatically on June 4th for Fang Zheng and the rest of the country. In a near brush with death, both of Fang Zheng's legs were run over by a tank.
The government used guns, repression, and blood to cement their authority and handle the protesters, and that took China further away from may have been a better path toward reform. Corruption is worse now than 25 years ago, and the special power and privileges of officials even more expansive.
In their brief standoff with authorities, the protesters had 7 basic demands. One, that officials and their family members disclose their income. Another, the right to freely protest in Beijing. A quarter of a century later, those 2 aspirations remain distant goals. China's leaders say they are in a life-and-death struggle against corruption, but calls for officials to disclose their assets have met stiff resistance. And while China's President Xi Jinping has launched sweeping reforms, he has been silent on the basic desires of the Chinese public, says senior Hong Kong journalist Ching Chong.
What does the people decide? People want a separation of power. People want to have a check and balance on the exercise of power. People want to have all the constitutional rights that they are entitled to.
Under China's constitution, protests or the right to assembly is permitted, as long as the protests do not infringe on the interests of the state. When the students and workers gathered in Tiananmen in 1989, what they were seeking was dialogue with the government, says Andrew Nathan, a political scientist at Columbia University.
In '89, the government, the ruling party really decided if we dialogue with you lot, I mean, there's no knowing what you're going to start demanding from us, and then we're not going to be authoritarian rulers anymore.
China's official stance on Tiananmen is that it was a counter-revolutionary rebellion. And much like the government's refusal to talk with the students then, there is no sign that that stance is changing anytime soon. Bill Ide, VOA News, Beijing.